Airplanes which are constructed largely of wood, such as the AT-10 Advanced Pilot Trainer, have one marked advantage over metal planes. If damaged, wooden ships are easier to repair. This is because simple woodworking tools and the necessary materials are often more readily available than those used in mending metal planes. Although it may never have a serious crack-up, there are dozens of minor accidents which could befall a plane around the field. Of course, these should be avoided. Nevertheless, a plane may occasionally show up with a hole in its skin surface, or with more serious damage to the structural members. The proper repair of such damage will make the repaired section as strong or stronger than it was before.
Since a wooden airplane is only as strong as the glue that holds it together, the correct preparation of the glue is very important. Any approved urea-type resin glue, such as Euformite CB551, Roxite 77-X, Cascamite ANS, or Plascon 250-2, will be suitable for use in the repair of wood airplanes. But in each case, manufacturers' mixing directions must be followed. The type of adhesive to be used in the following demonstrations of wood repair is Plascon resin type 250-2 cold press glue.
For the small amounts of mixed glue usually required in minor wood repairs, always mix it up in the proportions of 1 1/2 pounds of dry glue to 1 pint of water. Have a suitable container on hand in which to do the mixing, and if it has been used for glue before, see that it is perfectly clean and contains no dry glue particles. Into this container, pour the pint of water. An ordinary egg beater is a handy device for stirring purposes. While someone spins the egg beater, add the dry glue to the water as rapidly as possible. It is necessary to stir constantly in order to dissolve the dry glue and prevent lumps from forming. Continue stirring until a smooth, even consistency is obtained. Remember, the glue must be used as soon as it is prepared, and never add water after the glue is mixed. In preparing the wood for patching, it will be necessary to use sandpaper. But always remember to blow the work off with an air hose and wipe with a damp rag after any sanding has been done. Here's what happens when sandpaper comes in contact with the wood. The minute pores along the joint become filled with fine wood dust. When the glue is applied, it stays on the surface and is prevented from entering the clogged pores. This produces a poor bond, as the glue can't take hold to the best advantage. So remember, after sandpaper has been used, always blow the work off with an air hose and wipe with a damp rag. After this treatment, the pores of the wood are cleaned out and the glue seeps in, taking root, as it were, to form the strongest possible union. The proper curing time of the glue after it has been applied depends entirely on the temperature. Under ordinary circumstances, at a temperature of about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, the glue will require 6 hours to cure. At 80 degrees, it will be cured in 4 hours. At 90 degrees, only 3 hours are required. At higher temperatures, 2 hours is sufficient. Plaskin glue does not cure satisfactorily at temperatures below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So, on cold days, it may be necessary to heat the wood before and after the glue is applied. For heating the work, a light bulb can be used. If the bulb is turned on and allowed to remain close to the wood for a few minutes, it will usually raise the temperature sufficiently. If you have an infrared lamp, you can cure the glue much more rapidly. A property of infrared heat is that it dries the glue joint from the inside out, and this always tends to produce a more satisfactory bond. Now that we've covered the preliminaries, let's go to work and see how wood repairs on aircraft are made. Here's a case where the wing has been punched in, leaving a small hole, about 1 inch in diameter. This will call for a simple scarf patch. Incidentally, a hole of this size is about the maximum damage on which the simple scarf patch type of repair is practical. After you have made sure that the break does not extend into the skin surface beyond the actual puncture, cut away the fabric about 1.5 inches from the hole on all 4 sides. For this operation, use a sharp knife, but be very careful not to slice into the wing panel. Then, cut out the hole itself to form a perfectly round opening. The edges can be smoothed with a half-round rasp. The next step will be to remove the old varnish, and for this, use lacquer thinner. Give the thinner a little time to soften up the varnish, so that it can easily be taken off with a scraper. Using a sharp chisel, give the hole a 10-to-1 scarf to make a seat for the patch. 10-to-1 means that the width of the scarf should be 10 times the thickness of the skin of the panel. Use sandpaper to produce a smooth scarf. And after sanding, don't forget to blow the dust away with an air hose and wipe the work off with a damp cloth. Now, using a pair of dividers, find the exact diameter of the opening, including the width of the scarf. Lay out a circle of the correct diameter on a piece of plywood, which is the same thickness as the wing panel at this point. You will lay out a smaller circle to represent the inner edge of the scarf. Cut out the larger circle with your saw. And using a rasp, slope the patch from the inner circle to the edge, all the way around. After rasping, sand it off and give it the air hose and moist rag treatment. Try the patch for size. It should fit down perfectly flush with the wing. Now, apply a generous coat of glue to the scarfed edge of the hole and the scarf of the patch. Fit the patch in place and drive a small nail into the scarf to keep it from slipping. Small blocks of wood with screws in them are used to apply pressure until the glue cures. And use a piece of waxed paper under the blocks to keep them from sticking. Screw the blocks down tight and use at least 4 on a patch of this size. After the glue has cured, remove the blocks and sand the patch down until the entire surface of the job is perfectly smooth. After sanding, don't forget to use the air hose to get rid of all dust particles and wipe with a damp rag. Then give the area a coat of spar varnish. When the varnish has dried tack-free, scuff sand it and wipe the surface clean. Now take your measurements for a fabric patch. It should extend 1.5 inches beyond the edge of the old fabric on all 4 sides. Cut this patch from pre-doped fabric using pinking shears in order to produce an edge that will not fray. Cover the area with clear dope and carefully press the patch down evenly over the repaired surface. In this operation, be careful not to trap any air under the fabric, as this will cause blisters. When it has been smoothed out, apply another coat of clear dope over the fabric. Let this dry for 30 minutes. Then sand the surface lightly, wipe it off, and apply another coat of clear dope. Allowing a half hour for drying, the next step will be to use pigmented dope. This is made by dissolving 3 ounces of aluminum powder in 1 gallon of nitrate dope. In applying the first coat of pigmented dope, remember to finish up with your brush strokes all in one direction. Then, after it has dried for half an hour, sand the surface, wipe it off, and apply a cross coat with the brush strokes at right angles to the first. When this second coat has dried, your simple scarf patch will be completed. If the wing or fuselage gets punctured with a hole this size, or up to 3 inches in diameter, you will need to repair it with a doubler patch. Take a look to be sure the wood isn't damaged beyond the point of impact. Then cut away a square of fabric 1.5 inches larger than the hole on all sides. In cutting the fabric, take it easy. Don't let the knife slice into the wing skin. With the fabric removed, use your knife to trim the broken spot so that you have a perfectly round opening. Get it large enough to include all evidence of damage to the surrounding skin, but don't make it any bigger than is absolutely necessary. Now get rid of the old varnish on the area to be repaired. And this time, you will have to daub thinner around the inside of the hole as well to clean the surface where you will be gluing your doubler on the underside of the hole. Of course, the varnish on the top side will have to be softened also. When the thinner has had time to do its work, get busy with your scraper. And don't forget to scrape the inside area around the hole. Now, lay out your 10-to-1 scarf with a pair of dividers. Don't hurry, and double-check your measurements if necessary. A good scarf is the secret of a good patch. In making the scarf, use the proper tools, and be careful not to cut too deep or damage the thin edge. Sand the scarf. Blow off the dust with the air hose. And wipe it with your moist rag. To back up the patch on this type of repair, you will have to make a doubler. Here's how it's done. Lay out a circle 1/4 inch larger than the scarf edge, and another circle 1/4 inch smaller than the hole itself. Use a piece of 3/32 plywood. Saw out this circle. Then cut out the inner circle. You will now have a donut-shaped piece of plywood. Cut this through with a diagonal saw cut. The cut should be about 10-to-1, like the scarf. This is the doubler. It must fit inside the hole and leave enough on the inner rim to take the patch. Apply glue to the underside of the opening, and don't be afraid to use lots of it. Then, paint the doubler with glue and get plenty in the saw cut. Spread the saw cut, insert the doubler in the hole, and work it around until it is inside. Be sure to line it up so that it affords an even 1/4 inch rim around the edge of the opening. Now, clamp it in place with C-clamps using protective blocks on the scarf. Watch how this is done. Notice that enough clamps are used to exert a consistent pressure all the way around. Only by taking such precautions can you make a patch that will equal or increase the original strength of the ship at the point where the repair is made. While the glue is curing, lay out a patch to fit the opening and scarf it to match the scarf of the hole. Finish it off by sanding to make sure that it is perfectly true. After the glue has cured, remove the clamps and clean up the scarfed edge of the opening. After any sanding where glue is to be used, make the air hose and damp rag routine a habit. Be sure you don't neglect any of these steps. The next one is varnish. Use a rag to put it on the underside of the doubler, but don't get any varnish on the scarf. Now varnish the center of the patch inside the scarfed edge. And again, don't let the varnish get away from you. Keep it off the surface to be glued. Try the patch for fit. Tack it with a couple of small nails. And drill holes to take the screws of the pressure blocks. Remember, you are going to use as many as possible according to the size of the patch. Before you remove it, make a couple of registration marks on the patch so you can get it back for a perfect fit. Now put glue on the scarf and glue on the scarfed edge of the patch. In every case, both surfaces take lots of glue. Set the patch in place, check to see that it fits, and tack it so that it won't slip while you work on it. Now lay a sheet of wax paper over the patch and screw your pressure blocks down tight. They must be tight if you expect to have a good glue joint. Here's what the setup looks like in cross-section. The holes in the blocks are large enough to let the screw slip through up to the head, and the screw is long enough to extend through the scarf of the patch, the scarfed edge of the opening, and through the doubler. When these screws are tightened, they draw the joint together and produce a strong bond. When the glue has cured sufficiently, remove the pressure blocks. Sand the area, get rid of any paper that may stick to the wood, and smooth the edges of the patch down so that the whole surface is perfectly flush. Blow the dust away with the air hose, and in this case, since varnish is to be applied to the surface, a dry rag will do for the wiping operation. Now, varnish all exposed wood. When this is dried, tack-free, scuff sand it and wipe off the dust. In taking measurements for a fabric patch, remember that the fabric should be 1.5 inches larger than the square of exposed wood on all sides. As before, cut the pre-doped fabric patch with pinking shears. Slap on a coat of clear nitrate dope. Set the fabric in place on the top edge and work down from top to bottom, smoothing as you go. In this way, you avoid leaving air blisters. When the patch is smoothed down satisfactorily, put on your first coat of clear dope. When this first coat is dried, sand it down lightly. And give it another coat of clear dope. After a half-hour drying interval, sand the patch again and put on your first coat of pigmented dope. In 30 minutes, this should be sanded lightly and the last cross coat of pigmented dope applied. When this is dried, your doubler repair job will be complete. If you're called upon to repair a break as big as this, examine it carefully. An impact hard enough to cause this amount of damage may fracture the skin over a wider area than is first apparent. To play safe, you must remove a section of the wing at least 2 inches wider than the break on each side, and from rib to rib span-wise. So measure over to the ribs and lay out the area to be cut away. In this case, the front spar will form one edge of the hole. As before, cut the fabric with a sharp knife. Remember, the fabric is removed to leave 1.5 inches on each side of the opening you expect to cut in the wing skin. Now, using a saw, start cutting away from the hole until you have a rectangular opening that extends to within 3/8 of an inch of the ribs on each side. In this case, as the spar forms one edge of the hole, the wood is cut back to leave the edge of the spar apron exposed. Again, you will have to remove the old varnish by softening it with lacquer thinner, first around the outside and inside the opening along all surfaces where gluing is to be done. When the thinner has softened it up, scrape the varnish from the outside wood area. And don't forget to scrape the rib caps and the underside of the skin along the upper edge. This edge of the opening will need a stiffener, so take your measurements from rib to rib. The stiffener will be made from 3/8 inch spruce, and be sure it is the right length to fit snugly in place. When the stiffener is cut, mark around one end on a piece of 3/8 inch plywood to lay out the gussets, which will be glued against the rib caps to support the stiffeners. After making the inside vertical cuts, make a diagonal cut, like this. And saw out the excess wood. Never use a chisel, as it would damage the edge. Finish the gussets with a rasp so that they will fit properly. Then measure cordwise stiffeners of the correct length to fit against the rib caps. In this case, it will be necessary to shape the ends to fit against the spar apron. Such pieces should always be cut to conform with structural members that are involved in your repair jobs. You now have all the material necessary to go ahead. Put glue on the stiffener and plenty of glue on the underside of the skin where it is to be installed. If it is fitted correctly, the stiffener will stay in place while the gussets are installed. This is how the gusset is employed to support the stiffener. After being coated with glue, it is fitted around the stiffener and against the rib cap. You should have enough glue so that it oozes out slightly. A C-clamp will hold the gusset securely in place until the glue cures. Using a nailing strip to protect the edge of the panel, clamp the stiffener with C-clamps also. Now, glue the short stiffeners in place against the rib caps. Don't forget to use a piece of nailing strip to protect the skin when you put the clamps on. After the glue has cured, remove the clamps and dress all edges with a rasp. Now lay out a 10-to-1 scarf on all four sides of the opening. Remember, 10-to-1 means that the scarf will be 10 times the thickness of the skin at the point where the repair is made. Always measure the skin, because different thicknesses of plywood skin are used in constructing different parts of the wing. Use a block plane to start the scarf and set the blade to make a fine cut to avoid shaving off too much wood. The finer work can be done with a sharp chisel. A good point to remember is to keep all your tools in first-class shape for this work. Sand the scarf to finish it off and blow away the dust with the air hose. Don't forget the moist rag. It is necessary to use it in order to keep the pores of the wood open. Here's a tip for measuring the patch. Drive small nails at each of the four corners of the opening at the outside edge of the scarf. Nip off the heads and lay a piece of plywood of the same thickness as the skin on top of the nails. With your hammer, tap the plywood until the headless nails come through. Now, by laying your rule from nail to nail, you can easily lay out the correct size and shape of the patch. This method ensures perfect accuracy. The piece of plywood for the patch is now ready to be cut out and scarfed. Cut the patch to size with a knife. Break off the excess wood. And dress the edges with a plane to true them up. Then, lay out a 10-to-1 scarf. It will be easier to work on the patch if you tack it to the edge of the bench with a couple of small nails. Sand the scarf to finish it. And don't forget to use the air hose and damp rag. Now cut yourself some short nailing strips and start small nails in them at close intervals. Before going any further, pull the nails used in measuring the patch and clean all wood scraps out of the wing. Another good thing to remember, don't leave any tools inside. Try the patch for fit. It should be perfectly flush with the surface of the skin. Now tack it in place with a couple of nails. And make registration marks so that you can get it back the way you want it. The next step is to varnish the underside of the patch, but keep the varnish well inside the scarf. When all construction work inside the opening is completed, apply varnish to all new wood that has been installed. Again, don't let any varnish get on the scarf edge of the opening. You will now be ready for the gluing operation. And don't be afraid to use plenty of glue. Fit the patch in place. And here's where the registration marks are a big help. They will enable you to get the patch down right without sliding it around and scraping off all the glue. Tack the patch in a couple of places so that it won't slip. Wipe off any glue which oozes out. And cover the whole thing with a piece of waxed paper. Nailing strips are used to apply pressure on a patch of this kind, and 2 strips along each joint will be necessary. Tack the strips down from the center out toward the ends. This will avoid buckling and keep the patch lying flat. Be sure the strips are all nailed down tight. If they are loose, they won't produce the necessary pressure. When the glue has cured, rip off the paper and remove the strips. Don't try to get them off intact, but dig the nails out with your diagonals. If you try to pry them loose, you will damage the wing skin. In sanding, remove all traces of paper and try to get as neat a patch as the one you see here. Don't forget, at this point, the whole exposed wood area gets a coat of spar varnish. When the varnish has dried, tack-free, scuff sand it, but don't bear down so heavily that the varnish is cut away. The next step is to take measurements for your pre-doped fabric patch. As in all other types of repair, the fabric should be large enough to extend 1.5 inches past the exposed area on all sides. In cutting the fabric patch to correct size, use pinking shears so that the edges will not fray out. Now coat the area that is to receive the fabric with clear dope. Four hands are necessary to get a patch of this size down properly, so have someone help you. Start the fabric at the top edge and smooth it down, working toward the bottom. Be careful not to trap any air underneath. When it has been smoothed in place, the fabric gets a coat of clear dope. Let the first coat dry for about half an hour. Then scuff sand it to smooth it off and apply a second coat of clear dope. This should also dry for 30 minutes, when it can be sanded again to receive the first coat of pigmented dope. For this operation, finish up with your brush strokes all in one direction. When it has dried for half an hour, it should be sanded lightly, and the last pigmented coat brushed on with even strokes at right angles to the first coat. This will complete your stiffener patch.